Welcome, everyone, to this press conference just a couple hours after we announced Audrey Tang as one of the new 2025 Right Livelihood Laureates. It is an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you with us now to talk about this distinction. My name is Emoke Bebiak. I'm the head of communications at Right Livelihood. And I will be the host for this news conference. Just as a reminder, we have all kinds of photo and video resources available for you journalists. If you have trouble finding them, please reach out to us. And we are also recording this, and we're happy to share this recording with you. And with that, I will just have a couple questions for Audrey, and then we will open up the floor for all of you to ask questions. We have about 30 minutes for this news conference. So first of all, Audrey, congratulations. It is wonderful to have you. Good morning for you. And I know we have people for whom it's evening now.
Yeah. Good local time, everyone.
Exactly. Good local time, everyone. So my first question to you is, with the rapid adoption of artificial and intelligence worldwide, what safeguards do you believe are the most urgent to protect democracy and human rights?
Certainly. So when AI systems are developed today, usually they're trained to align or to be loyal to some single individual. It could be the leader of that company, it could be a leader of a state, it could be the user. But optimizing for the preference of a single individual actually might make that individual more polarized or less connected or otherwise less horizontally aligned with other individuals. We have seen it with social media. We have seen it with the infinite scroll, and with now Sora joining the infinite scroll. I'm sure that there's a lot of thought being put on by people around the world on how can we actually foster human-to-human coordination, cooperation, instead of just the maximization of individual preferences. And so when we train AI systems, currently in Oxford, I'm working on what's called a six-pack of care, which uses a different logic. Instead of maximizing any single number, which is the utilitarian logic, we're making sure that it's good enough to some communities, making sure that community can steer, can tune those models to improve the relational health of the community itself instead of any particular individual outside or inside the community. So if people are interested, please feel free to check out the website. It's at sixpack.care.
Thank you, Audrey. Then looking back on your previous job as the first digital minister of Taiwan, how could Taiwan's experience with digital democracy be adapted to other countries, especially where the governments are much less open than in Taiwan?
I think it's important to remember that we were the resistance. We were the 500,000 people on the street in 2014, but we did not just protest. We demonstrated that with broad listening, with this bridging ideas, instead of engaging through enragement, we can give voice to the uncommon ground, the ideas that previously wasn't seen as common knowledge between the warring kings, but rather made the bridging bonus through deliberation and generative polling. And so that was in 2014. And we did not require or even wait for government to implement such measures. We implemented such measures as part of the civic tech movement, GovZero. And so because of this, around the world, what we have seen is that there are pockets of good where people started from the margins, from the most vulnerable voices. And then the government said, okay, maybe this kind of methods actually produce, instead of IMBY, yes, in my backyard, NIMBY, not in my backyard, MIMBY, right? Maybe in my backyard, if I do this, if I do that, and so on. And so to your question, I think it's a two-step process. First, the civic activists must demonstrate, not just protest. We must show that it is possible to connect people who are otherwise very polarized on very concrete idea, very concrete proposals, as Taiwan have shown with Uber, with marriage equality, with many other topics. And then second, we need to build alliance with the career public service, with the bureaucracy, because they actually also know how to resolve this problem. They just need a air cover and a pre-commitment from the political leaders, which is why here in California, we're working with the state employees in the digital democracy platform engaged, the CA, the Gov. And we're basically crowdsourcing, asking the state employees what would make your life easier if we implement this technology, that technology. So it's also about government efficiency, but it's bottom up from the trenches, not top down.
Thank you. And just one last question from me, that if you had to name one priority for the global community to ensure technology strengthens rather than weakens democracy, what would it be?
I would like to remind everyone that we, the people, are the super intelligence that we are looking for. So we should not build this superhuman intelligence that builds another better intelligence that needs less of human intervention and finally takes off and leaves everybody behind, the vertical takeoff. I think we should focus on the horizontal takeoff, which is the ability for us to tap into our latent superintelligence, building through augmented collective intelligence.
Thank you, Audrey. And I just want to make sure that everybody sees Audrey. I saw some comments that she wasn't on, but maybe if someone could send a thumbs up in the chat, that would be wonderful. Yes, you can see her. Thank you so much. So now let's open the floor for questions. And I already see one question in the chat from Peter. Peter, would you be open to asking your question through audio, or would you like me to read it out for you?
Okay, Peter prefers text.
Okay, so the question is, should the EU build so-called sovereign AI with American companies as OpenAI and Microsoft, or should they build with only European partners like Mistral AI?
That's a great question. I think the idea of sovereign AI means AI that's being attentive to the local social cultural context. And to do so, one need to engage the model makers that builds in this ability to fine-tune and to post-train, to align those AI models. There are already makers of AI, such as OpenAI, that publishes the open version of GPT on Hugging Face. And so once it is in the open, of course, people in Europe can start building upon it. However, I would also say that the training material also matters. If we make sure, for example, with Mistral, that a certain European culture is emphasized as a kind of internal thinking language of the model, then it's less needed for the post-training cultural tuning to kind of force a model that thinks internally in American English to think in European context. So at the end of the day, it is a matter of free choice. The more choice there is on the market for models that think internally in different cultures, the easier for people to build, again, a horizontal takeoff. In Taiwan, we fund more than 150 different vertical model trainings. So instead of training one single super model that sees everything, solves everything in a kind of adequate but not very good way, we focus on those narrower domain-specific models precisely because that gives the users, the people, easier steering, easier control over individual model alignment and tuning. And also it's much more energy efficient because it does not need to memorize all the Studio Ghibli clips or something like that. And so for each task, like summarization, translation, facilitation, and so on, it is both faster, more energy efficient, and much more tunable. So I think the future is public, pluralistic, and portable AI models.
Thank you, Audrey. And we have a question from the floor from Ryan. Let me open your mic and please identify your outlet and who you are.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we can hear you.
loud and clear.
Oh, yes. My name is Ryan Takeshita. I'm from TBS, Tokyo Broadcasting System, Tokyo, Japan. Audrey, nice to see you again. I interviewed you a couple of months before. Thank
Uh-huh.
you for again.
Yes, for the cross stick. Hmm.
Yes. So, congratulations, first of all. And one question. So, throughout the world, from government to Supreme Courts to higher education, respected institutions are losing people's trust. And you were the minister of Taiwan. So why do you think government institutions are losing trust? And how can they regain back those trust?
That's a great question. Well, as Dao De Jing says, to give no trust is to get no trust. If the vertical institutions do not trust the people, especially the vulnerable people who otherwise do not have a voice, then it is very difficult to earn that trust back because currently it is very easy to build the horizontal mode of trust of a peer-to-peer communication. And indeed, the Right Livelihood Award goes to this year people who build such peer-to-peer communication networks to speak from the margins to fight against injustice. And so the idea of a horizontal mode of trust through broad listening, I think, is really key. If vertical institutions share their power to set agenda so that people can, through broad listening, set agenda of those institutions, then it's an act of radically trusting the people. And then some of the people may trust back, but it always starts from the vertical power trusting the people first.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Yes, Ricard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm just a citizen in Sweden. So you seem like a very productive person. And if that's the case, is that because you work night and day, or do you have people working for you and with you, or both, or something else? And the reason I ask is I think this is crucial for a functioning democracy, that people can work efficiently with digital tools in a way that helps us reason. So do you have some recommendations or methods for that?
Well, it is true that I work night mostly and also day because I'm a very competitive sleeper. I have to sleep 8 hours or more a day to be creative. And indeed, I often say that the most creative work occurs during the nighttime because if we do not get sufficient sleep, then basically people just repeat whatever their habits was the previous day. But a new day may actually come with new challenges. And so have insufficient sleep is to have insufficient adaptability. Now, I think the point of horizontal coordination is also very important. When I joined the cabinet, I said quite publicly that I'm working with the government, not for the government. I'm working with the people, not for the people. And so by working in almost like a Lagrange point, like the point between two celestial bodies, but not falling into the orbit of either, but in the midpoint, facilitating conversations between both, then we increase the bandwidth of democracy. Previously, if you vote, which is very important, but it's just, I don't know, 3 bits of information uploaded every 4 years. If you limit the expression to such low bandwidth and very long wait, very high latency, then people do not have an accurate image of a group selfie of what's actually going on with the political will, and that fuels polarization and populism. And what we found out is that the tools such as Polis, broad listening tools, sensemaker, and so on can lead to a much more accurate poll, which is not predetermined, but rather a generative poll where the options are generated by the citizens, or what I call pro-social media. And this kind of way makes a continuous group selfie possible. So you can afford to like do a weekly group selfie with your community. And as journalists, that's actually a practice of journalism because it shows both the balancing ideas, like both sides and the best arguments, and also the bridging idea, which is the factual things that can be agreed upon, even though the two sides differ otherwise in opinion. So it's like the Hutchins Commission. If you keep running this, then you produce the sense-making, the journalism practice with the people. And this is how we changed the basic education curriculum in Taiwan in 2019 to focus on curiosity, collaboration, and civic care, so that the young people go through this journalistic practice and inoculates their mind against this polarized outrage.
And we have one more question in the chat from Peter. And he's asking, what is your view on US AI projects like Stargate? Some people would say that the US and big tech is using the AI hype to expand existing monopolies in social media and cloud and so on.
I think what Europe has, which is this idea of portability, is very important. As you know, currently with the Digital Markets Act, you can have instant message systems coming from different companies talking to one another. So they must compete on better service instead of on the capture of the network effect. Here in the US, the state of Utah also passed the Digital Choices Act that goes a step further. Starting next July, if you are a Utah citizen, you can move from social media A to social media B while keeping all your community. The new likes, reactions, replies will simply forward to your new network, so you lose nothing by migrating to a better service. So this kind of social portability mandate is not a European only thing. Some US states are also looking at this because it fosters competition without stifling innovation. In fact, this makes innovation much more easy because the new way to organize information or social media do not need to solve the problem of a cold start, of getting people to migrate en masse to the new service. People can migrate one by one. So to your question, I believe it is very important that Europe also look at social portability like in Utah, and also we can figure out a way to do portability across AI services as well. Maybe we can have some human context protocol so that when you switch from a cloud-hosted AI model to a locally community-hosted AI model, again, you do not lose anything. And Peter has a follow-up. The idea is great, but in practice, for customers, it could be hard. Well, I mean, the idea of telecom portability, if you switch from telecom A to telecom B, you get to keep your number. This is called number portability. It is very complex to implement on the back end because I was the Minister of Digital Affairs and in charge of the number portability strategy and the universal service strategy, where the places that did not have good broadband as a human right, if a telecom goes in and implement that, then the other telecom will have to pay for the cost of building such system because it's building at a loss, or disaster roaming that we have done in Taiwan, so that even if only one telecom remain in service after a natural or unnatural disaster, the other telecom users can roam on the existing network that is still operating, and so on and so forth. So while these are technically complex measures, for the people, it is actually very simple to use once it is implemented. Basically, it's like podcast. If you listen to podcasts, sometimes you hear the word, find us at wherever you get your podcast. And that is portability in motion.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Maybe while we're waiting, I have another question for you, Audrey. And that is about protecting free expression. So how do you balance the protection of free expression while also preventing harmful disinformation from undermining civic trust?
Well, first of all, we need to distinguish speech versus reach. Of course, speech needs to be protected, any lawful speech, no matter how awful, the state should not just unilaterally take it down. On the other hand, currently in social media, we're seeing a situation where if I don't subscribe to someone, but if the algorithm think that this awful speech will cause me to stay engaged, meaning enraged, and also click on the advertisement more, it will push those unsolicited information to my eyeballs. And if the advertiser have some way to fund this funnel by analyzing the demographics, our behaviors, and so on, then it's even worse because then it strip mines our social fabric of common experience and sell the attention to the highest bidder. In Taiwan last March, to solve the problem of advertisers pushing deep fake scams, because the scammers, turns out, can pay a lot more than ordinary small and medium businesses to our eyeballs. We sent 200,000 text messages to random numbers around Taiwan, asking how should we make sure that the information integrity is upheld without harming freedom of expression, because after all, Taiwan is the most free in all of Asia when it comes to internet freedom. And so people gave us very good ideas. For example, 450 people in rooms of 10 in 45 rooms, deliberated in a generative way. One room says, let's show all the advertisements as probably scam until a human digitally signs it through the know your customer measures. Very good idea. Another room says, if somebody lost $5 million to an investment scam that's fake, unsigned, and if the social media, push those in an unsolicited way, then the social media company needs to be liable for the full damage of $5 million. And another room says, if a foreign social media company refuses to set up a local office and do not pay the liability, then let's slow down, throttle connection to their videos, but do not censor them. Again, this is an idea that gets wide agreement from across the different ideological camps, so that many public representative of Taiwanese people agree on this bundle of policy with more than 85% approval. And that was last March. And by May, the Digital Signature Act amendment was passed. By last July, the Anti-Fraud Act has been passed. So this year, if you scroll in Taiwan, Facebook or YouTube, you simply do not see those deepfake ads anymore. The problem is solved. And so I think the idea here is, again, to radically trust the people and show the big tech companies that this is the measure that do not sacrifice freedom of expression. And indeed, the people cares even more about freedom of expression. But the freedom of speech does not mean that we need to get foreign robots freedom of reach for free. I don't think that's in our constitution.
And we have one more question from Ricard in the chat. He's writing, haven't done my homework, so I'll ask here, are the tools that Taiwanese use available in a place for reuse?
Yeah, definitely. So the tools that I just described, such as Polis, the Google Jigsaw SenseMaker, the Frankly online deliberative polling software, many others, or Ethelo as the platform we use here in California, all of them are not just available, but rather free, as in free software, so that you can customize it however you want to your local social cultural context to align it again horizontally with the community. So it's ready for reuse. And if you're interested in the list of all the tools that we have used and the stories from Taiwan, as well as from other places such as Japan, with the Digital Democracy 2030 project, the Itopata, and newer platforms, please check out the website plurality.net.
And we have one more question from Peter, who works for Radar.dk, part of Danish The Engineer. Do you see any changes in the technological and political relation between the US and Taiwan in Trump 2.0?
So one of the ideas that Taiwan had when we had 500,000 people on the street and many more online in 2014 is to build this bridging consensus when it comes to whether to allow the Beijing brands like Huawei and ZTE into our then new 4G network. And we did a conversation around that during the Sunflower Movement. And we agreed that because of the lack of independent journalism, it is very difficult to find out whether those so-called private sector services has been de facto state-owned at any given point. So for any update, we will have to do a systemic risk analysis in order to make sure that for this update, it is not de facto taken over by the state apparatus. Because again, independent journalism is quite rare in that jurisdiction. And so because of that, we share this idea. And during Trump 1, the idea gained this branding called Clean Network, I believe. And then this idea got adopted by many Democratic partners. Now in Trump 2, and I would say also that Biden continued this idea of a trustworthy tech stack with Taiwan really at the center because everybody trusts our chips and the supply chain around them and cybersecurity. And so now in Trump 2, we're seeing the idea of clean network being applied to things that are not telecommunication. For example, the social media company ByteDance, which produces the service TikTok. And the idea again is that in Taiwan, we have for a very long time now, since 2019, I believe, that says that anything that is de facto controlled by Beijing should actually not get adopted without question in our public sector, in our public schools, and now with our Cybersecurity Management Act, even in the Wi-Fi services provided by public venues and so on. We can look at how TikTok and other services de facto controlled by Beijing can enter our society. Whether to integrate it more or less is a matter of cybersecurity. And so that idea has been taken up seriously by Trump too. And as we have seen in the news, they recently reached an agreement so that the data flow can be monitored to US citizens based on the US.
Thank you. I think we have time maybe for one question, if anybody has a burning question.
Well, I really have an hour, but
Oh, you have an hour.
no question,
Oh.
we can finish early.
Yeah. Careful what you offer, Audrey. You might be sitting here
Well,
for.
my parents are both journalists, so I have
Oh,
nothing
of
but
course.
filial piety to journalism.
Oh. Well, but I don't see any more questions. Oh, no, now we have one from Peter. Would you consider Trump's friends as good caretakers of TikTok?
Well, first of all, I would say that it is a matter of network flow analysis. So if like physically, we can see that Beijing does not have a way into the algorithm, into updating the algorithm in a kind of surprise manner, then technically it could be good enough. And this is a matter that independent audit can easily prove. And so I think in internet governance, I think what is important is that independent third party can also monitor and see for themselves whether the agreement is actually taking place. And indeed, if Europe goes with the Utah idea of social portability, then anything, really, anyone posted on TikTok can be subscribed from other non-TikTok platforms, maybe some European platforms, and then you do not need to worry about the data flow anymore because it would be a federated and independently auditable protocol that sends the new TikTok videos to your European services. So I think, again, the good thing about technical protocols is that people who otherwise have no reason to trust each other can use the internet protocol to coordinate and build what's called confidence building measures across all the different sites. This is really the magic of the in the internet.
I would like to end, Audrey, by asking you a question. Oh, well, actually, we have another follow-up from Peter. So let's do this and then one last question. So, but he's saying, but quite a weird partnership, Trump and TikTok. Couldn't Trump just take advantage of that?
Well, first of all, again, if we take the protocol-based innovation lens, then it is positive sum, right? If TikTok offers its videos in an open protocol and makes sure that anybody with any better algorithm can rank those videos according to people's preferences instead of a centralized preference, again, aligning horizontally to communities, not vertically, then yes, the communities around President Trump will gain much more community sovereignty over the discourse that they would prefer. But then so would any other community. So that's the idea of interoperability. It allows people on, say, Blue Sky and people on, say, Truth Social to talk about the same thing with different lens. And it also offers interoperability between the ideas from both. This is the beauty of bridge-making systems. For example, community notes, which was inspired by the Polis algorithm that we tried in Taiwan and still use in Taiwan. It's not just the left wing in its bubble or the right wing in its bubble. It is calculating the upwing, the unlikely common ground, the uncommon ground that is agreed broadly by both sides, and then featuring these as the community notes. And pretty soon, I'm told that X.com is probably going to offer something like that for the main feed as well. And so when that happens, the interoperability between systems like True Social or like Blue Sky or TikTok in the future becomes paramount because it allows people with different worldviews see in a kind of stereo fashion. So even though the two community may not see like exactly eye to eye, they can function as the two eyes and to see things stereoscopically.
Very interesting. We've got another question from John, who's asking, how can alignment assemblies play a central role in depolarizing politics in countries on the front lines of freedom and democracy?
Indeed, the idea of alignment assembly, of which the information integrity is one, the example that I just used in Taiwan, can produce this kind of group steering of emerging technologies. And this has always been the case in Taiwan. When Uber entered Taiwan, when Airbnb entered Taiwan, well, the deepfake scam ads entered Taiwan, always we use this kind of online citizen assemblies to resolve the tension between freedom of expression on one side and the mental health, the polarization or depolarization needs of the society on the other side. And time and again, we have proven that you do not have to make the sacrifice of one side or the other. Because again, if you make a trade-off or sacrifice, then maybe half of the population feel that their voice are not being heard, and democracy turns into kind of a cynical practice because they know they're just 30%, 20%, but their voice also matter. And in a citizen assembly, especially using bridging algorithms, actually the fewer people on the smaller segment offer a higher bridging bonus. So if you can bridge toward them, then this idea gains much more virality. So instead of retweeting or dunking that gives virality to the extreme voices, this gives virality to the middle ground, to the uncommon ground that is collectively discovered. And so once again, I think this depolarization is really key. After hundreds of such exercises, people in Taiwan understand that democracy is not just voting every 4 years. It is a continuous motion that with 5,000 signature, anyone can get a cross-party, even post-partisan conversation on any emerging topic.
Thank you. Okay, last question. And that is, what does the Right Livelihood Award mean for you, and how will it further your work?
Well, first of all, I'm really, really honored to be recognized this way. I'm truly humbled by the 200 and counting, 203 laureates. And I think we unite in a mission to make sure that the depolarization methods are widely known and shared. I think this is very important because Taiwan researched these kind of method, not out of like fun, although it is fun to participate in bridging conversations, but also out of existential necessity. We have to prove that democracy must deliver. Democracy does not lead to chaos, as some authoritarian narratives would like to say, and it is worth keeping our democracy system around. But no democracy is an island, not even Taiwan. So the other laureates show across the world in various different configurations in the front line, in the struggle against autocracy, that again and again, horizontal, peer-to-peer, this horizontal mode of trust can actually get depolarization done, can deliver results. And so in my mind, this is a network of democracies that reinforce each other. And together, we can make democracy backsliding into the democratic comeback.
Thank you very much, Audrey Tang, one of the 2025 Right Livelihood Laureates. And thank you everyone for attending this press conference.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.